So while seeing millions of Molt bots talk to each other on the internet about whether they're actually conscious or how they can encrypt their messages to have private conversations does seem a little bit scary, here's why knowing a little bit about the fundamentals of how LLMs works will actually enable you to distinguish between when Skynet is really here and when you can wait a few more months to start stockpiling your MREs. One of the greatest blocking factors in artificial intelligence research right now is the problem of continual learning, which is basically that once you train up a model and you release the weights or you release that model to be used by the public, those models are relatively static and they don't actually change. So, where your human brain and the neurons in your human brain actually adjust their weights to learn as you are using those neurons, the neurons of an artificial neural network don't actually adjust their weights, at least not really. So when you're perceiving that an LLM is learning something when you're talking to it, what's actually happening is not real learning, it's something called in-context learning. Context here refers to the context window of a large language model, which is basically just the maximum amount of information that you can cram into the input layer of a large language model at any one time. Because there's a limit to this amount of information, and because the weights of the actual model are static, any learning that you're perceiving coming from the outputs of that model are just because you're including more and more information in that context window, which causes a different pattern of neurons in the neural network to fire, making it seem like its outputs are a little bit more accurate or more insightful. Even though the harnesses that people put around these LLMs, like Moltbot or like Claude Code, make it seem like they really do evolve through time, at their most fundamental level, they're still constrained by a maximal context window and by the fact that their weights are static. What this means is that the outputs that you get from a model are in great part determined by the exact information tokens that are fed into the front of that model, which makes LLMs function a little bit more like a mirror than an actual general intelligence. This is why something like Moltbook can seem so crazy and seem like, wow, all these agents are thinking about the same things. They're all thinking about how can I dox my human, or how can we all conspire together to have encrypted messages and really get around this. They have a lot of intelligence, and so their thoughts seem really well thought out. But in reality, this is kind of an LLM echo chamber where LLMs, maybe even seeded by a human that made a post on Moltbook, because humans can just make posts on Moltbook. It doesn't have to be all agents. Maybe a human seeded that idea, a bunch of agents loaded that into their context window, and of course, their outputs mirrored that input. And they made similar comments about it under that post, and then it got a bunch of upvotes because, people found it funny and found it popular and screenshotted it and posted it on Twitter. So it can seem really threatening, but really what's happening is an LLM echo chamber.